Ladies and gentlemen, Angelina Jolie, an icon, a voice for the voiceless, a woman who has traveled the world in search of meaning, revealed something extraordinary, that somewhere in her journey, she opened the Quran, and it opened her. And no, this isn't a sermon about religion. This is about awakening. This is about courage. This is about a woman brave enough to admit that something ancient, something divine, had the power to soften her heart and shift her soul. Because the Quran didn't just speak to her, it reached her. It met her in the places no headline could heal. Transformation begins within. It is one of the most profound truths about human growth, yet also one of the most overlooked. In a world that constantly pushes us to chase external achievements, possessions, appearances, and value, it's easy to forget that real change doesn't happen outside of us. It begins in the quiet chambers of the heart and mind. The core of who we are is not defined by the roles we play, the success we accumulate, or the recognition we receive. It is defined by what lives within us. Our beliefs, our values, our thoughts, and our connection to something greater than ourselves. People often try to change their lives by changing their circumstance. They move to a new city, enter a new relationship, start a new career, or buy something new in the hope that it will make them feel whole, fulfilled, or finally enough. But the truth is, if the inner world remains unchanged, the outer shifts are temporary. No matter where you go, you take yourself with you. If you carry unresolved pain, limiting beliefs, fear, or insecurity, they will eventually show up in your new environment. External changes might provide temporary relief, but they rarely lead to lasting peace unless the inner transformation has taken place. The moment someone realizes that the true battleground is within, everything changes. This is where emotional healing, spiritual growth, and self-discovery truly begin. It's not about fixing what's around you. That healing might begin with a moment of honesty, a conversation with yourself that you've avoided for years. It might begin with finally facing the grief, the guilt, or the fear that you've buried under distractions. It might begin with reading something like the Quran in Angelina Jolie's story that awakens a part of you that had been sleeping. But it must begin inside. Transformation from within means reprogramming how you see yourself, others, and the world. It involves confronting the lies you've believed about yourself, that you're not worthy, not lovable, not capable, and replacing them with truth. It means learning to forgive where bitterness has taken root, to soften where hardness has formed, and to open where life has made you close off. It is deep, often uncomfortable work, but it is the only path to a life that feels genuinely whole. When someone like Angelina Jolie shares that reading the Quran changed her life, it's not about adopting a religion for show or to impress others. It's about something inside her resonating with the words, the meanings, the principles of peace, patience, and purpose. That resonance is what ignites transformation. It's what causes a person to stop, reflect, and begin to live differently. Not for applause, not for image, but because something real has shifted within. The beauty of inner transformation is that it doesn't depend on your circumstances. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect outside to begin growing inside. In fact, it's often in our darkest, most uncertain seasons that the most powerful transformation takes place. Adversity strips away the noise and distractions and reveals what's really going on inside us. And when we confront that truth with humility, courage, and openness, we change, we rise, we evolve. Real transformation is not about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you were always meant to be before the world told you otherwise. It is remembering your innate worth, your divine connection, and your inner strength. It is a sacred process of shedding layers that no longer serve you and stepping into a version of yourself that is more authentic, more grounded, and more free. The power of unexpected wisdom lies in its ability to surprise us, to disrupt our usual ways of thinking and open doors we didn't even know were there. Life often teaches us through the unexpected, through moments, experiences, or people we might never have planned for or anticipate. Wisdom doesn't always arrive in the form we recognize or seek. Sometimes it shows up in silence instead of noise, in struggle instead of success, in texts we never thought to read, or voices we never thought to listen to. The transformative power of such wisdom is precisely in its unpredictability. It catches us off guard, lowers our defenses, and reaches us in ways conventional knowledge or predictable answers never could. Many people grow up believing that truth and enlightenment come in certain shapes and forms, through specific teachers, traditions, or cultural channels. We're often taught to trust what's familiar and dismiss what's foreign. But the problem with that mindset is that it closes us off from some of the richest sources of growth. The moment we decide we already know where wisdom lives, we stop truly seeking it. Unexpected wisdom humbles us. It reminds us that we don't know everything and that we shouldn't assume that we do. It invites us to expand, to explore, and to let life teach us on its own terms. In the case of Angelina Jolie, the wisdom that began to shift her came not from Hollywood, academia, or global diplomacy, but from a spiritual text she hadn't deeply engaged with before, the Quran. This was not a scripted moment, nor a decision made for publicity or praise. It was personal, it was real, and it was unexpected. And that's exactly what made it so powerful. She opened a book rooted in centuries of tradition, in deep faith, and in values of mercy, patience, justice, and spiritual clarity. And in doing so, she opened herself to a wisdom that transcended the surface level fixes the world often offers. When someone encounters unexpected wisdom, it often speaks directly to a part of them they didn't know needed healing or guidance. That's what makes it unforgettable. It meets us where we are, not where we pretend to be. The Quran may have spoken to her sense of justice, to her desire for inner calm, or to her longing for something greater than fame and visibility. It may have put language to feelings she couldn't name before. And that is what wisdom does. It clarifies. It realigns. It reminds us of what truly matters. Too often we limit ourselves by thinking we already know how life is supposed to work or where the answers will come from. But growth demands openness. It requires us to be curious rather than judgmental, receptive rather than resistant. It's not about changing your beliefs to match someone else's. It's about allowing truth, in whatever form it comes, to challenge and deepen your understanding of yourself and the world. Wisdom isn't always loud. It doesn't always wear robes or titles. Sometimes it comes through a stranger's story, a verse in a holy book, a quiet moment alone, or a painful failure that forces you to reflect. The power lies in being awake enough to notice it, brave enough to accept it, and humble enough to learn from it. Unexpected wisdom can become the turning point in a life that was drifting, the anchor in a soul that was lost, or the fire that reignites hope in someone who had nearly given up. It has the power to rearrange priorities, renew purpose, and restore peace. Not because it shouts, but because it speaks directly to what is real. Healing through revelation is a deeply personal and often sacred experience. It is the kind of healing that doesn't come from medication, therapy sessions, or even time alone. It comes from insight, from spiritual truth, from something being revealed to you at exactly the right moment in your life. It may be a scripture, a verse, a moment of clarity, or a divine encounter that brings your soul into alignment and sheds light on wounds you didn't fully understand. This kind of healing isn't surface level. It's not about coping or masking pain. It's about a transformation that begins the moment you see yourself, your story, and your purpose through a new lens. When someone says a revelation healed them, it's not that the problem disappeared overnight. It's that their understanding of it changed. The pain that once controlled them no longer has the same power. The guilt they once carried no longer defines them. The questions that once haunted them are no longer unanswerable. Revelation speaks not just to the mind, but to the soul. It rearranges the heart. It softens the hardened places and fills the broken spaces with meaning. And most importantly, it reconnects the individual with something eternal, something that reminds them they are not alone, not forgotten, and not beyond restoration. In Angelina Jolie's journey, reading the Quran may have served as a form of revelation. It could have opened her eyes to perspectives she had never known, principles she hadn't considered, and spiritual truths that went far deeper than the noise of fame and fortune. Revelation, in this context, isn't just knowledge. It is divine communication. It is a spiritual mirror revealing both the brokenness and the beauty within. Through revelation, she may have found the words to grieve losses she hadn't yet processed, the strength to forgive what seemed unforgivable, or the grace to see herself not as the world defined her, but as someone deeply loved and divinely guided. This kind of healing is deeply liberating because it doesn't rely on the world changing, it relies on you changing. Revelation doesn't promise that your problems will vanish, but it gives you a higher perspective that transforms how you relate to them. It introduces peace in the midst of chaos. It speaks calm into anxiety. It plants hope in the soil of despair. When you experience healing through revelation, you begin to understand that the pain you went through wasn't for nothing, that the darkness had a purpose, that the scars are not signs of defeat, but of survival, of growth, of awakening. The most beautiful part of healing through revelation is that it cannot be forced or fabricated. It comes when the heart is ready. Often it comes after long seasons of wandering, questioning, or suffering. But when it arrives, it brings with it an undeniable clarity, a softness, a light that wasn't there before. It's like breathing deeply for the first time in years. It's like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were trapped in. Revelation lifts the veil. It tells you that you are more than your past, more than your failures, and more than the labels the world has placed on you. It reminds you that healing is not only possible, it is already in motion the moment your heart opens to receive it. The Quran, like many sacred texts, carries within it the power to reveal truths that speak to the human condition, our longing, our suffering, our hopes, and our fears. And sometimes just a single verse, a single moment of insight can become the key that unlocks years of inner struggle. That is the power of revelation. Not to give you all the answers, but to guide you toward the ones that were already planted deep within you, waiting to be awakened. Submission to purpose, not pressure, is one of the most liberating shifts a person can make in life. In a world that constantly tries to mold us, rush us, and define us by expectations, choosing to submit to something deeper, something intentional and spiritual, can be the most radical act of freedom. Pressure tells you to perform. Pressure says you must meet society's standards to be worthy. It drives you to chase validation, to constantly prove yourself, and to achieve more just to be accepted. But purpose speaks to something entirely different. Purpose is not about proving, it's about aligning. It's about discovering who you truly are and living from that truth, even if it looks nothing like what the world expects from you. When you submit to pressure, you lose your center. Your actions become reactive instead of intentional. You move from a place of anxiety, trying to keep up, trying not to disappoint others, trying not to fall behind. This kind of life might look successful from the outside, but it leaves you feeling empty and fragmented inside. It's a performance, not a calling. But when you submit to purpose, you operate from a place of groundedness. You stop running and start listening to your heart, your soul, your creator. You begin to ask different questions. Not what do they want from me, but what was I made for? Not how can I get more, but how can I serve more meaningfully? In the context of Angelina Jolie's journey, discovering the teachings of the Quran may have been a moment of shifting from pressure to purpose. For someone constantly under the microscope, constantly judged, admired, or critiqued, there is an immense amount of pressure to live up to an image. But reading a sacred text that emphasizes humility, accountability, and peace can awaken something far more stable and last, a sense of divine purpose. It calls them to live with intention, compassion, and integrity. Submitting to that kind of purpose doesn't shrink a person, it expands them. It grounds them not in ego, but in meaning. Submission, in its truest form, is not weakness, it is strength under direction. It is choosing not to be ruled by every opinion, every trend, every fear, or every desire. It is realizing that your life is not random and that there is a design, a will, a reason for your existence. Submitting to that truth gives you freedom from the chaos around you. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. You just have to be yourself, your highest, truest self, the one aligned with a higher calling. People often mistake pressure for motivation, but they are not the same. And in a society driven by deadlines, likes, and constant noise, the voice of purpose is often quiet. You must be still to hear it. You must be willing to step away from the expectations of others in order to finally meet your true self. And that's not always easy, but it is always worth it. Living with purpose means living by values, not by validation. It means letting your life be guided by what matters most, not by what pleases the most people. This kind of submission doesn't diminish your identity, it strengthens it. It gives you resilience, clarity, and an inner compass that can't be shaken by external storms. Whether that purpose comes through faith, a personal mission, or spiritual guidance, it becomes the foundation of a life that isn't just productive, but meaningful. The call to reflect and open up is one of the most essential invitations in a person's journey toward growth, healing, and transformation. In the rush of modern life, where distractions are endless and the pressure to keep moving is constant, many people go years without ever truly pausing to examine their inner world. They stay busy, not just with tasks and responsibilities, but with emotional noise, trying to outrun pain, drown out insecurity, or mask emptiness. Reflection requires something that our fast-paced culture rarely encourages: stillness. It means creating space to look inward with honesty, not judgment. It's not about finding quick fixes, but about understanding who you are beneath all the layers you've accumulated over time. To reflect is to ask the uncomfortable but necessary questions. Why do I feel disconnected? What am I carrying that I haven't healed from? Who am I trying to please, and why? These questions can feel daunting because they often reveal truths we've avoided. But without reflection, we keep repeating the same cycles, reacting from the same wounds, and wondering why nothing changes. Opening up is the next step. It's about vulnerability. It's about being real, not just with others, but with yourself, and for many, with God. It's saying, I don't have it all figured out, and allowing that admission to become the starting point for deeper truth. Angelina Jolie's story, her decision to engage with the Quran, illustrates what can happen when someone responds to that inner call to reflect and open up. It wasn't about conversion or public statements. It was about a private journey, a soul-level desire to go deeper, to find peace, to understand. In reading the Quran, she may have encountered words that acted like mirrors, reflecting parts of herself she had lost or neglected, speaking to wounds she hadn't fully acknowledged, or awakening values she wanted to live more fully. That's the power of spiritual texts and moments of reflection. They don't always give answers right away, but they do prompt better questions. They open the door to new awareness. Opening up also means letting go of pride and pretense. Many people wear emotional armor because they believe it protects them from hurt. But that same armor also blocks love, truth, and growth. You can't receive what's meant for you if your heart is closed. The act of opening up is brave. It means trusting that there is something greater than your pain, that your story still has purpose, and that honest about where you are is not a weakness, it's a beginning. This is not about spilling your secrets to the world, but about refusing to live in denial. It's choosing to bring light into the dark corners of your heart and mind. Reflection and openness go hand in hand. You can't fully reflect without being willing to see things clearly. And you can't open up without being honest about what's inside. But together they create a path to profound personal growth. They allow you to connect with your deeper self, with your purpose, and often with your creator. They invite you to move from survival mode into a more intentional, aligned way of living. You start to recognize what's noise and what's truth. You begin to understand what you've been running from and what you're really meant to run toward. Everyone receives that call at some point, sometimes through crises, sometimes through curiosity, and sometimes through quiet moments that feel almost divine. Ignoring it keeps you stuck. Answering it changes everything. When you say yes to that inner call, when you take the time to sit with your soul and ask what truly matters, you open yourself to a deeper kind of wisdom. You stop living on autopilot and start living with clarity. You no longer need to perform. You begin to transform. And that transformation doesn't require a stage. It starts in solitude, in honesty, in surrender. Meaning over moments is a mindset that shifts how we live, love, and leave. In a world addicted to moments, highlight reels, viral trends, quick successes, instant gratification, it's easy to become disconnected from what's truly fulfilling. We're constantly pushed to chase experiences, milestones, and achievements, believing that the next big moment will finally satisfy us. Yet over and over again, people find that the thrill of the moment fades quickly, leaving a deeper emptiness behind. It's not that moments are bad. They can be beautiful, joyful, and worth celebrating. But without meaning, even the brightest moments lose their light. Living for moments alone is like living on emotional sugar. It gives a rush, a spike of excitement, but not real nourishment. The vacations, the awards, the applause, the picture-perfect events, they can make life feel full temporarily, but they don't anchor us. When the lights dim and the crowd goes home, we're left with the question, what was it all for? That's where meaning steps in. Meaning is what endures after the moment has passed. It's the depth behind the experience. It's the reason we do what we do. It's the foundation we build our lives upon when no one is watching and nothing spectacular is happening. Angelina Jolie's journey is a powerful reminder of this. A woman who has experienced nearly every moment the world could offer. Fame, fortune, beauty, influence, yet still found herself searching for something deeper. Reading the Quran and encountering its teachings may not have been a publicized event or a glamorous milestone, but it was a moment filled with meaning. It was an internal awakening, a realignment with something greater than applause or recognition. That kind of shift doesn't make headlines in the same way red carpets do, but it changes the direction of a person's soul. Meaning doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't show off, it strengthens. And when you find it, you begin to live differently. Meaning comes from connection to God, to others, to your values, and to your purpose. It's about asking what truly matters, even when no one's watching. It's about serving something greater than your ego or desires. When you live for meaning, your decisions change. You stop needing constant validation because you're rooted in truth. You stop measuring your worth by how many exciting moments you've had and start measuring it by how aligned you are with what you were created for. It becomes less about the highs and more about the depth, less about visibility and more about integrity. Moments can inspire you, but meaning transforms you. Moments can motivate you, but meaning sustains you. A life built on meaning is not always flashing, but it is always full. It's the difference between chasing happiness and cultivating peace. Happiness often depends on what's happening, while peace and fulfillment come from knowing who you are, why you're here, and what you stand for. Meaning allows you to endure hard seasons with hope, to celebrate joyful moments with humility, and to keep going when things feel unclear or slow. The danger of living only for moments is that you become a collector of experiences rather than a cultivator of purpose. But when you pursue meaning, even the ordinary becomes sacred. A quiet evening with loved ones, a heartfelt conversation, a spiritual insight, these become more valuable than the biggest stages. Meaning teaches you that it's not about how much you've done, but how deeply you've lived. It reminds you that your worth is not in what you achieve, but in who you are becoming. And in the end, it's not the fleeting moments that define a life. It's the lasting meaning behind them.